Jimmy, Rod, and Chris, and we are live on Riverside. We're trying something new. How exciting is this, guys?
Listen, I'm all for new things, right? The WWE is a constant new, right? We are always churning new matches, new stars. So, right, we adapt, we move on, we'll be fine. We're still recording, we're still talking. That's all we do.
That's all we do. That's what we like. Chris,
Hey,
you
listen,
excited?
if the WWE can switch networks, can't we?
Yes, we can for sure. Speaking of the WWE, speaking of networks, Netflix isn't a network. It's bigger than all the networks combined, but they have a documentary out. One of the it's a top 5, I think, on Netflix right now. The Vince McMahon documentary. We talked about episodes 1 through 3 last week. For those of you listening right now, if you're interested, throw some questions in the chat. But Rod, we have all 3 finished the documentary, and I want to go to you first. Where did you land overall, your impression of the documentary?
Well, let me consult my copious notes that I have here and see what I wrote down. I wrote down a couple of things at the end, right? And I wrote down, it seems to be it's all because he wasn't loved enough as a child, right? We hear so much about all of these things, right? But it just kind of seems to me that you have someone who has a terrible upbringing, right? And we can't blame Vince McMahon for any of that. You know, we can't blame him for the stepdad that beat him and his dad who was a bit cold to him and absent from his life for a bunch of years, right? But what that does is it creates a cycle, unfortunately, right? It's really, really hard to then break that because that's the only thing that you know. So it seems clear to me, at least in my dime store psychological take here, that Vince McMahon then took that pain that he felt out on everybody else, right? So that made him just not like a lovey, cuddly kind of guy. And then on top of it, he was just so run by the business, right? Like basically every interaction Vince McMahon had was about the business, was about the WWE, was about getting more and more and more and more and more. So if you're all about business and you don't have great relationships in your life of examples of how to treat people, you're going to come out an awful lot like Vince McMahon, I think, right? And that's even leaving out all of the terrible sexual proclivity stuff because that basically has nothing to do with any of that. That's just him being a complete dirtbag.
Chris, I'm really interested to see your perspective on this as well. Do you think that Rod is kind of on point there, or do you have another view?
I am not putting that much weight into his upbringing. I'm really not. I mean, you could maybe give some of it to him seeking his dad's approval, much like Shane O'Mac searching for his dad's approval. Um, but what I got from it as a whole is like, hey, here is this guy who was able to build this phenomenal thing that the decisions he made on the business did nothing but succeed. But he kept stepping on his own foot, putting up roadblocks in front of himself with a scandal of some sort almost every 5 to 10 years, right? So, like, I thought the documentary did a well job showing that, like, hey, look how well he was able to build this, and then look how he almost screwed it up. Look how he came back and made this decision and kept up with the times, but look how he shot himself in the foot again. I also don't think the story's over yet either. And I think that's a little bit disappointing to me as well because there's not an ending yet. It's hard for me to be fully immersed into a documentary that I know doesn't have an ending.
Well, it was kind of supposed to have an ending, but then, as you said, the every few years cycle started again. I thought that the documentary painted Vince McMahon as I thought Vince McMahon would be. Um, One of the big things he mentioned was he is not the Mr. McMahon character, and people didn't know him. Rod, I kind of think he might be. I mean, from everything I saw, a couple examples from the documentary: Undertaker, Brock Lesnar. Undertaker, yeah, concussion. Oh yeah, concussion, concussion, concussion. Vince McMahon, he didn't have a concussion. He was just so overwhelmed with grief at losing that he didn't remember it. Like, what is that? How in depth or how into something are you when you don't realize that no, he actually had a concussion?
See, I read that another way, right? I read that as that's just Vince McMahon's complete business brain. He knows concussions are bad for business. He knows that concussions could possibly lead to multi-million dollar settlements. Vince McMahon clearly has tried to avoid multi-million dollar settlements in his career, right? And literally, like Chris said, every episode of the documentary ends with type on a black screen telling you some case that they settled, right? Every
Yeah, it is.
6 episodes end with some sort of settling of a case. So Chris is right that he's never been able to run away from it. But I see what you're saying, Jim, but I tend to read it more in the business brain aspect, right? That's Vince McMahon just turning on his brain. I can't, as the founder, creator, owner, WWE, say, oh, yeah, concussions are a thing that happen to our wrestlers all the time. He just, because he knows that the minute he says that, that's then used against him in a court of law. Because as we just said, he has plenty of experience there.
And he will continue to have plenty of experience as well. Chris, there was said, or even I think it was downright said, might have been by Paul Heyman, that his decision to continue the Over the Edge pay per view when Owen Hart passed away, when he died, um, he went back and forth. He doesn't know if he made the right decision or not. But even hearing him talk about it is like, well, the crowd didn't see it, so it should be okay. And then I think it was said, even if Vince McMahon himself would have died on that show, he would have wanted the show to go on because it is all about the business. And Chris, it said the business has a hold on him. He doesn't have a hold on the business. And I thought that was pretty accurate.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that sentiment that if Vince had somehow met his demise during a PLE event,
Oh, yeah.
that he would want the show to go on no matter what. And if he could, he'd probably still try to direct it from where he was, whatever direction he may be going in the afterlife. But that being said, that's a tough one for me too. That whole Owen Hart scenario. I also think I see Vince McMahon as another guy who has that narcissistic, I'm never wrong type of personality where even if something does come up, listen, that's a character. That's not me. But boy, does that line so blurred that I don't think there is a line there at all.
I don't think there is either. I really don't think there's a line there. And Rod, I don't know what's another question. What's another comment you had about the documentary here?
Well, I love what Chris just said there, right? That's old school New York Roy Cohn mentality, right? That's this famous New York fixer who instilled into a lot of people, right? Always admit that you're winning and never admit defeat, right? And that's definitely something that Vince McMahon does. That's definitely something that WWE Hall of Famer Donald Trump does. We see aspects of that in American life all over the place these days, right? Is that no one will admit mistakes. Everyone claims that they win. So that playbook is out there. Vince McMahon definitely lived that through his entire life. I think we should talk about the doc just in the overall just documentary feel. Do we like the way that Bill Simmons and the Tiger King guy put it together? Do we like the choices of talking heads that they had? Do you feel that there should have been people more speaking good for Vince McMahon? And then I guess that also leads to my other question off of that, Jimmy. Is there anybody other than Bruce Pritchard who's willing to go on camera and try to cape for Vince McMahon?
I did like how they brought Bruce Pritchard in after the fact. I think he's one of the only ones they did it. They did some with Shoemaker, I think, but that was not really pertinent to the documentary. I like how they did that. I think that was really a good way to show that they were trying to be as impartial as possible. Say, what do you think we did? I think it sucked. I think you didn't show him in the right spot. And what else could you have shown about him? I think because they didn't really show anything about his family life. They didn't mention that he and Linda have not been together, and they've been married, I think, still, but they're not together for quite some time.
They said under her byline, under her name, it said wife/former wife/CEO WWE.
Yeah, so I like how they brought him in. I really do. I think that was good. I think that having a Dave Meltzer there who, like him, hate him, whatever, he's done all this research. He's talked to Vince McMahon personally quite a lot. I think that was a good person to bring in just to give a little credibility to it as well. The Rock didn't say much, probably because he was trying to toe that line. So maybe if they would have had Rock in there towing that line a little bit more. John Cena wasn't that interesting.
I
in
love me
that
some John
aspect as
Cena, but
well.
nobody's shocked by that John Cena wasn't interesting, right? I mean,
Well,
that's
he's
kind of John
company man.
Cena's overall brand.
Yeah, company man there. Chris, did that Bruce Pritchard at the end kind of throw you a little bit, or do you think that was a good decision on their end?
I mean, anytime that you can show that you're attempting impartiality in a documentary is good, in my opinion, especially if you can show both sides. Because let's be honest, all these stories that we saw being told to us in this documentary, we also saw Vince McMahon himself discussing these scenarios as well. So we were being shown multiple sides. We had former wrestlers that were critical of McMahon. We had former wrestlers that were in support of McMahon. I mean, a lot of it depends on the person's scenario, like Undertaker's not going to have a lot bad to say about Vince McMahon. He's had a 30-year plus career because of some decisions that Vince McMahon has made. Same way with Hogan, same way with The Rock, same way with Cena, they still realize that this man essentially helped them build a career in the path that they're on now. So you got both sides. So I thought that was good. And to show like, hey, we know this stuff happened since then. You've seen these episodes. What are your thoughts? I thought that was good. I actually wish they had a couple more people to respond.
Well, and they probably did. Obviously, Tony Atlas was in there a lot more than I thought he would be because he was a little bit more just the way his mannerisms were. He kind of got you to the screen. Rod, I want to see the 30 hours of footage they don't have. They didn't show us. I want to see that. Some of the questions, some of the nope, I'm not answering that. What we didn't see though, Rod, and I don't know if there is any footage of this, but McMahon with his family outside of the WWE at Thanksgiving, at Christmas with his grandkids. Usually they do show some of that stuff in a documentary like this, and I don't know if they had any of it.
I think it would have been good for McMahon, and I think it would have
Yeah.
served to round out the documentary a little bit. But I got to be honest, man, I found it much more compelling to see all of the old footage, right? I mean, I found all that stuff like the episode was episode 2, I believe, opens with Vince McMahon doing a song and dance. I mean, like that to me, I was just mesmerized by that. You know what I mean? And like some of the footage of the old talk shows and stuff. I mean, and just like all that stuff to me was great, right? Because you're right, guys like you and me, we're marks. You're even more of a mark than I am. You know what I mean? You got even more experience in than I do.
Middle
you know what
name,
I mean? So,
baby.
Yeah, they weren't telling me anything I didn't know other than a couple of little nuggets in there. You know what I mean? But like just seeing the footage, the Cyndi Lauper stuff, the early 80s, late 70s matches, you know what I mean? Like just getting more of that foundation. I'm going to walk away from this documentary feeling that it helped solidify my base as a knowledgeable, great wrestling fan that people can turn to when they have questions about wrestling. But I, like Chris, wonder what the end of this documentary would have been if Vince McMahon was still involved, right? If they still had Vince McMahon's blessing and they could have went back to McMahon for one final interview. So I like that Chris brought that up because I do wonder what the doc ending would have been had Vince not walked away from cooperating.
I don't think it's as bad as Vince thought it was, and I think that Meltzer actually said this a lot on his podcast, where if you like Vince McMahon coming in, you're not going to like a lot of the doc. If you didn't like him, you're probably going to like a lot of the doc. But both people would want more and don't think it's as good, So overall, I think Simmons and those guys did the best they could. They were going in one direction with it and then had to completely go a different direction in the last 6 to 8 months. I mean, that's got to be. You're working on something, Chris, for 3 years. You don't know if it's going to happen. You've got some amazing access, and then all of a sudden, this happens.
Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about throwing a wrench into it. It probably delayed the entire documentary for another 6 months at minimum to a year. So that's a big thing. And I thought they did it well because you could tell throughout the first 5 episodes what they were kind of leading to. You could kind of tell, like, hey, this is happening. We know it. So, like, let's kind of lead you on that path. And maybe they decided to center on a few more stories like Cyndi Lauper and female wrestlers coming into the WWE in the early 80s versus what they probably would have done if they didn't have this lawsuit at the end?
Let's close the loop here, Jimmy. We don't need 6 episodes on Paul Heyman and ECW, but I mean, give me more Paul Heyman sitting down for interviews, because that dude is not afraid to say what is on his mind and the way he sees it. And there's got to be some absolute wild and crazy ECW footage that they can put together. So give me a Heyman 3-part documentary. Let's go.
Well, I don't know how much the WWE is going to do this with the Ringer anymore. We'll see. I mean, it could be with the new group they have in. But like other people with microphones in front of a national audience, I'm not here to talk about the past. I'm here to talk about the present and the future moving forward. And I want to talk about the biggest story coming off of Monday Night Raw. The Miz turns on R-Truth. No one saw it coming.
It's unbelievable. I'm just so saddened. I was being won over by the Miz. All right, I was becoming a Miz fan, giving him respect for the years of work that he's put in, and he just wants to throw that all the way. You know what? To the Miz.
Okay, well, good critique there, Chris. Is a very good critique for all of our listeners and viewers here. Rod, what did you think about Raw overall? What is your one takeaway that might be the story of the night for you?
Well, I tend to look at the Miz turning on R-Truth similar to Chris, but then I also have a little extra caveat on there that I like the Karrion Kross of it all, right? The silver-tongued devil that they're trying to maybe make Karrion Kross out to be at this point, right? We got Xavier Woods acting a fool and maybe breaking up with Kofi. That started with a little bit of Karrion Kross being in his ear. Karrion Kross has been getting after Miz a little bit. Now Miz is turning on R-Truth. They have Karrion Kross literally just barking at Miz the whole time right before he super kicks him in the face. So I like the Karrion Kross of it all because, Jim, we are perhaps the most pro Karrion Kross podcast out there. So we want good things for our guy.
We love us some Karrion Kross. And it really has nothing to do with anyone else or Scarlett. We just like Karrion Kross a lot.
But no, Jimmy, the biggest thing for Raw is, of course, who showed up at the end. All right. I'm watching downstairs in my basement. The wife and the son are upstairs sleeping. And I start Raw a little late and I catch up. And when my guy comes out and curb stomps Bronson Reed at the end of the last Monster Standing match, I literally yelled out, "Burn it down," and about woke up my wife and son. So I was incredibly excited to see my guy looking great in the leather jumpsuit. Like, let's go. Seth Rollins back. I should have seen it coming.
Chris, are you shocked that was Rod's number one story coming out of Raw?
No. We all know he has a man crush on Seth.
Hey, that's okay. Nothing wrong with that. Speaking of looking great, that new Intercontinental title, little splash of blue makes things look a lot better, doesn't it? I love that belt. Now, I thought the belt was kind of just plain and ordinary beforehand. It kind of harkens back to the old school 80s Intercontinental Championship that was really good. NXT got a couple new belts. I know, Chris, you don't watch the minor leagues because you don't have an open mind about anything, but old people usually don't. Rod,
I'll wait till they get to the show. Thank you very much.
Is it the big show, perhaps? But anyway, Rod, those belts were something, weren't they?
Listen, if we are to believe that the belts are the one thing in our industry that we are to care about, right? We don't have Super Bowl championships. We don't have MVPs. We don't have all NBA. We don't have all pro, right? We don't have gold gloves or silver sluggers. If you want to talk about that sport baseball that apparently is in the playoffs. I had no idea, but apparently the playoffs just started. Congratulations to baseball,
games, by the way. Yeah.
Congratulations to baseball for still existing. But if all of those things and we care about them and all the other sports, then we have to care about the belts and wrestling. And if these are going to be the bright, shiny objects that everybody wants, then yes, they need to look cool. You need to refresh them every once in a while, right? Even Pepsi and Coke and Sprite change up their cans all the time, right? It's just a fact of life, and I'm all for it.
I agree up to a point. All right. And I think you have to have that one title, that creme de la creme, that one that's been the same, a la the Lombardi Trophy that's been the same forever, or the Stanley Cup that's been the same forever. You need that top of the line belt that should, to me, kind of stay the same for the most part. Like if that's supposed to be the one that holds all the history, the 17 title holder from Ric Flair or Hogan, or the 15 from Cena has 15, I think, or whoever. Like, that's the one that should probably, in my mind, say the same. The rest make it a little flashy because we got to do something to make them worthwhile, because sometimes they get lost in the shuffle, a la the men's tag team belts.
Well, they keep trying to do that with them. Braun Breaker looks like he's a face now. He and Uso had a nice conversation there. They wanted to change him to be a face. Gee, I wonder who he could go against in the future. That would be kind of a cool matchup. Maybe the world champion Gunta may be someone that he goes after soon. I do want to talk a little bit about the Xavier Woods Rey Mysterio. If you want to turn someone heel, trying to take a mask off a luchador is a good way to do it. I love Xavier Woods. Love him. I don't know if it's going to work, though, Rod. Yeah,
There's
Rod
no
lets go.
chance. There's no chance that it works. No chance that it works. Absolutely no chance. I, too, like you, am a Xavier Woods supporter, but I also understand we need villains, right? I mean, we need villains. We can't just have Drew McIntyre just sneering and be the only villain on Monday Night Raw. You know what I mean? We need other villains. So why not be Xavier Woods? But I don't know. I don't know if Xavier Woods can fully be the heel. I don't know if it's in him, right? It's going to be hard for me to buy it after the guy he's been for so long. And I'm here for it because I love me some Xavier Woods, but I, like you, Jimmy, share your trepidation that perhaps we are ending up where we don't want to be.
Speaking about where we don't want to be, you don't want to be involved with the devil at all, do you, Chris? But it's not God you're praying to. It's the devil you're praying to. You will be praying to CM Punk.
It's pretty telling that CM Punk can't get over this. He keeps coming back. I know he won the strap match with some finagling of the corners or whatnot, but does he really believe that he's going to survive this match at the Blood Feud in Atlanta? Do we think that he's going to survive this Hell in the Cell? Because I don't.
I think he's winning the Hell in the Cell, Chris.
Why?
Because we're going to put him on a trajectory to win the damn Royal Rumble, and it's going to piss me off.
Yeah, basically, that's what Triple H did text me. That's exactly what he wants to do. So, therefore, yeah. Because what are you going to do with McIntyre if he wins?
It doesn't matter.
Yes,
Really doesn't matter. Does Drew?
For those of you who watched for the first time, it's the weekly. It doesn't matter. Who cares? Chris comment of the week. It doesn't matter who wins the main event of the pay-per-view.
It doesn't matter in the long run for Drew. Drew is a big enough star that you can pretty much write him into wherever you want. He can go back and end up with a feud with Sheamus again, or put him up against Breaker, or put him up against Gunther. It doesn't matter because Drew's going to draw. Drew is the face of the WWE.
Okay, so I thought you were being serious there for a second, but thank you for coming back and saying that the face of the WWE, bull that you just said. Of the two of them, Rod, even you're the biggest CM Punk, skeptic here. Of the two, I think we know who the bigger draw is, right? And if you say McIntyre, I'm stopping his podcast.
Listen, it's not even close. I mean, it's not even close. Did Drew McIntyre have people chanting his name at every live event during his period away from the WWE? Absolutely not, man. People have been foaming at the mouth for CM Punk for a decade. This guy's still way more over than Drew McIntyre. I, though, will say that Chris is being crazy here because of his Drew McIntyre fandom. And, I love that about him because I'm crazy with Seth Rollins fandom. But he is onto something here, though, right? CM Punk does have a real life track record of injury in his recent matches. We're now putting him in a Hell in a Cell in a match that's going to be probably 15 to 20 minutes, I would assume, right, Jimmy? We're going to need some spots there.
More. There's only 5 matches on the show.
Yeah, see, so a 30-minute match, right? We're going to put him in a 30-minute match in a cell with spots in. I mean, I don't know. He could come out of this thing with another collarbone injury or a wrist injury or something, but I'm excited for the match because, again, I still show me CM Punk. You get in the ring and call yourself the best in the world, show me. And the last time he had a match versus McIntyre in the strap match, I thought he was good, but there was more strap going on than match. This time, we're going to have to see cool spots.
And forgive me if I'm wrong, but this is on like normal pay-per-view time, right? This isn't like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. This is in the
Yeah, it starts
United
at
States
6.
of America. So that's kind of
Unfortunately, though, there is a huge college golf tournament this weekend at the Warren course at Notre Dame. So I'll actually be at work for a little while during the start of this pay-per-view. I'm a little bummed out for that.
Okay. Well, hey, those courses got to be kept well. So
Oh, listen,
that's
we've
important.
been on it for like 2 weeks. All right, we got this checklist, all these things we got to get checked off. We got 18 college golf teams coming in. We got to have the course looking good. So
That's
I'll be
awesome.
working Saturday afternoon, and then I'll come home and sit down to a Bad Blood pay-per-view. But get a load of this. I then have to report back to work Sunday morning at 4:30 a.m. to then get ready for the final day of the tournament.
I'm sorry, Rod. That
Yeah.
sucks.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I like being a groundskeeper out at the golf course in Notre Dame. Shout out to all my hardworking dudes up there, but 4:30 is awfully early. That means your boy's gonna have to basically wake up at 3:45 to get out of the house in time to get to work.
But
It's
then,
a Cinderella story.
But then, like, hey, get the grounds taken care of. Oh, there's no light because it's still dark, but it's okay.
We got the little coal miner helmets, right? And then we got
Oh,
lights
good.
on all of our
Foot by
vehicles that
foot.
go around.
Foot by
And then
foot. That's awesome.
We also make sure that everybody driving the vehicles are those of us who have been there for a while and know their way around the course, know where all 83 bunkers are on hand, so we don't have anybody mistakenly driving into one. But listen, this isn't a golf podcast, Jimmy. I'm sorry.
On that. No, I want a documentary on that. We're going to go to Bad Blood, and then we're going to get out of here. We already talked about the roll-up to this. Hell in a Cell, CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre. This probably should be going on last. I mean, it really should be. Maybe the Bloodline against the Mega Powers goes on last. But
Roman Reigns always goes on last, Jimmy. You know it. Even as you're saying it, you know it.
I know. CM Punk, Drew McIntyre. I have CM Punk winning. I think, Rod, do you have CM Punk winning this?
Yes.
Oh, it's Drew McIntyre, fellas.
Okay. Drew McIntyre winning and then going on to feud against Sheamus for the first time this week. That Sheamus and
shout out to Shamo here in my neck of the woods at the Irish game, hanging out at the linebacker. I wish I'd have known a little more about that. I'd have gone up try to get Shamo to say, "Hey, listen to the Yeah We Know podcast" into my phone, but I didn't even know he was going to be there.
Sami Zayn and Gunther is going to be on Raw, apparently, not even on the pay-per-view. So that's kind of an interesting little
I like it.
Switch there.
I like it. We all love Sami Zayn, but we don't need it to be another PLE match. We just don't, because we know Sami's not winning. So let's just have it be on Raw. It's fine.
Damian Priest versus Finn Balor, who returned for the first time in a couple weeks on Raw. I think this could be a match of a night candidate. I really do. I like this a lot. I think Damian Priest is going to beat Finn Balor then to kind of move on and stop that feud. Or does it continue and something happens again? But I've got Damian Priest winning that. Chris King, who you got?
Yeah, so I'm going to take Damian Priest here. I think the Mega Powers split their wins. So I'm going to take Damian Priest over Finn Balor on this one.
A little foreshadowing. I like that. Rod. Rod is Rod is muted right now, so we've got that.
The mute. Listen to me. Hold on. You guys always get on me about this, but this is the first time we've used Riverside. All right, the mute is in a different location than where I was used to before. It's taking me a couple extra beats. Get over yourselves. All right. Finn Balor is winning this match. All right, he is winning this match because of what you said about Drew McIntyre. Right. Finn Balor loses this match. What are we doing with him? Absolutely nothing once again, right? Absolutely nothing once again. And so Finn Balor's back where he's been for the last 2 years. He's now essentially supposed to be the leader of the Judgment Day. Finn Balor wins this match.
Rod, I like that a lot. I think that you might be right on that. Let's go to the other half. Liv Morgan, the champion, versus Rhea Ripley, the challenger. Dominic Mysterio will be placed in a shark cage above the ring, so he cannot interfere, because Chris, shark cages are solid. There's no holes in a shark cage that you could drop something down from at all. Won't happen. Just so you know, Chris King, who you got, Liv Morgan or Rhea Ripley?
I have the real leader of the Judgment Day, Rod, Liv Morgan, keeping her belt through some shenanigans, of course.
Rod.
I'm just going to say 100% agree. I 100% agree with Chris that there's going to be shenanigans. Liv Morgan is going to continue with the belt because we've seen Rhea Ripley as absolute ass kicker, and I don't think we want to launch her back into that quite yet. So I think Liv gets this feud and continues driving people crazy as the women's champion. Jimmy, I love that you also called how the schmaz is going to go down, by the way, proving your dominance, that something's going to get dropped out of the shark cage.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I do think Liv Morgan also wins this. Bad Blood, I don't think is where you want Rhea to win the title. You want Rhea to win the title at a Survivor Series, at a Royal Rumble in Indianapolis, or at a WrestleMania. You don't want her to win it at Bad Blood.
What if we even had Rhea win yet another Royal Rumble, right? What if we got her a third Royal Rumble win and then she got back? I mean, like she literally had to do that kind of a climb, right? Where the only way she can get another shot at whoever has the belt is by winning the Rumble. That might work too.
Speaking about earning your shot at a championship, Rod, thank you for that transition. We have Bayley going against Nia Jax in a match that I still don't really care about that much. I don't. Whatever. It's all about Tiffy time. This might be the Jim Jam, whatever. Like, I think Nia wins. I can see where Tiffy might do something to cause a little bit of stress, but I don't think she's going to cost her the title, Rod.
All right, I'm going to echo your sentiments there that I think that we don't really need this match. But what I'm going to say is I think Nia Jax is a little bit better at being a professional wrestler than we give her credit for. Now, notice I say professional wrestler, okay? She still is a little bit reckless in the ring, and she still can be a little bit too robotic in there, right? But she's really, really good at the sneering heel looks, and she's getting a lot better at, like, the crowd, you know, her crowd work. Like, I got to say that the Nia Jax I first was introduced to versus the Nia Jax we see now, I see the improvement, but I still don't care about her. And I think we're going to see Tiffany Stratton walk out of the Bad Blood pay-per-view with the belt. I'm not smart enough like Jimmy to be able to call the schmazzery here, but I think somehow Bad Blood ends. Tiffy Time will be holding the women's belt.
I love that. I hope that happens. I think that would be something to take away from the pay-per-view. Chris,
so I think, you know what I'm going to say, Jimmy? Here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say it becomes a bigger deal because Bayley actually beats Nia Jax and then loses the belt seconds later to Tiffy, and that makes it seem all that more of a big deal. And then Tiffany gets to say that she actually beat Bayley and didn't screw over Nia Jax in an attempt to try to not, you know, be on Nia's bad side.
And then then Tiffy tries to change how the dynamic is moving forward. I like that idea, Chris.
Yeah, that is way smarter than what I thought. I do want to see Tiffy Time happen. I need to see some sort of major shenanigans go on in this match for me to pay close attention to it. I do think when it's all said and done, Nia will still have the belt, and both Bayley and Tiffany will be demolished in the ring, and Nia will be on her own again, her versus the world.
I like that. I like that. She actually wipes out Tiffy, and it goes the other way, that the Tiffy-Nia relationship ends with Nia just proving her dominance once again. That could work too, Chris. Look at you. That's good.
Wait a minute. Sorry. Something came up on the thing. Did you say that Tiffy would try to cash in and lose?
Yeah. That would also be the first time it's ever happened with a female.
Women, yeah. I like both of yours. Both of yours is better than mine. Let me tell you that right now. We have Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns versus the Bloodline. Plus or minus 400 interference spots in here. I think Kevin Owens costs Cody Rhodes the match here, and I think the Bloodline win. Rod,
I have a question first.
Yeah.
Do we see the Wise Man?
No, I don't think it's big enough. Is it big enough? I don't think it's big enough.
Do we see Jimmy Uso?
Let's see. What is it? It's October. Kevin Owens wouldn't cost him that. So if it's another month and a half though, because it's basically 2 months to Survivor Series. That might be a little soon for Uso, because you got to think the Usos are coming back to go in War Games. But
see, but I'm actually going the other way. Going the other way. I think that we see at the end of this match Roman standing arm in arm with the other members of the Bloodline, and it was an elaborate ruse the whole time.
Wow.
That's what I think's happening.
Okay.
Roman Reigns is not going to go face yet. He's just not going to go face yet. I know the crowd wants that.
Cody Rhodes.
Yes, I know the crowd wants that, and the only way to get the crowd back to booing Roman and not screaming "We want Roman" is for him to take out their precious Cody Rhodes, the world's most boring WWE champion. So That's what I think's happening.
Chris King, what do you think, bud?
That would be a little fun. It'd probably make me a little mad that I'd just be back to the old bloodline again, going, why are we doing this over? I think that we're going to see Roman pinning Solo. We've only seen Roman be pinned once in the last, 5 years, essentially. And I don't think we're going to see anything happen again. Twice, Rod?
Got to count the tag team match where he got pinned by Jey Uso, right? That then led to the Jey Uso one-on-one match. You got to count that as a time where Roman was down for a 1-2-3.
Yeah.
But you're right. Other than that, it's just Cody Rhodes.
Yeah.
Or Seth
Yeah.
Rollins got him in a disqualification, but that wasn't a 1-2-3.
I think if you want to keep this particular bloodline story moving, though, you got to have more between Solo and Roman. And I think Roman getting a win here elongates this feud longer.
All right. It's going to be an interesting PLE for sure, especially if some of our ideas come out on that.
But we don't
Anything
need
we
the
need
feud.
to-
Wait a minute, real quick, Jimmy. We don't need
Yeah.
the feud to be any longer, though, Chris. Like, because I get what you're saying there, right? Like, normally we will. Be
Oh,
like,
I
"Well, that's been
know."
going on for so long. I think this would just be like it's just a new chapter. You know what I mean? Roman turns on him. It's just like, oh, we had this like little deke, but now we're right back to where we were.
Rod, I've been clamoring for the end of the bloodline since the beginning of me
Of the
coming back
bloodline.
and everything else, and I know they're just going to continue it because I don't want that to happen. All right, so I'm just going into what I know is going to happen because I want the opposite to happen, and I know they're not going to do that.
And with that, you've been listening to the Yeah We Know podcast, part of the Marinos Podcast Network. You're in the ring with Jimmy, Chris, and Rod.
Chad Gable, American Made, Ivy Nile. I see you guys. All right, I see you guys. I think maybe you're building towards being a decent little heel faction. Keep up the good work, Chad Gable. Always love.
Goodbye, Net. Yeah.